You know, it was with great joy and great relief that we watched the rescue of those miners in Chile. As I watched the coverage on television, all that high tech equipment, it turned my mind back to former times when such high tech equipment was not available to miners. For example, they would take cages of canaries down the mine shaft and into the mines with them. And when the canaries began hitting the bottom of the cages, they knew the air was toxic and it was time for them to get out. And that in turn made me think about the viability of our churches, because this time the canaries are our precious children and our grandchildren. They're hitting the doors of church buildings in record numbers, and they're not coming back. I was visiting with a mother recently. She had 4 children and she had raised them faithfully in the church. But she said, you know, Landon, they're all grown, they're gone away from home, and not one of them attend church. And she agonized over it. I could see it in her face. She said, I have wonderful children. They care about the world. They want to be of service to the world, but they just don't find church meaningful. And then she said something that touched me deeply. She said, you know, I kind of understand, because sometimes I myself sit in church on Sunday morning and I wonder, really, what is this all about? But she said, I know it's important and I still go, all my friends are there, but I understand the conflict. And as I visited with her, it made me remember something my mother had said to me when I was a little boy. It was one of the first things I heard about church. My mother put her hands like this and she said, Landon, here's the church and here's the steeple. Open the doors and see all the people. You know, of all the things that I've learned about church over the years, I think that first little simple illustration that my mother gave me perhaps contains the key to make the churches more viable. It's a matter of opening them up to see all of the people. When we open them up, we make the air less toxic for our young people and for older people as well. And you know, when my mother opened her hands and said, see all the people, there were no walls. I think one of the greatest mistakes the church has ever made and continues to make is somehow to limit their vision to the 4 walls of the church building. That Bonhoeffer said, Christ is not Christ except in the midst of the world. And it follows that the church is not the church except in the midst of the world. And I think when we open our eyes and see all of humanity in its complexity and in its diversity, I think when we see the world in which we live and in which our children live, when we see this whole realm of humanity and open our eyes and open our vision and open the church to that, it's only then that we will avoid being irrelevant, not only to our children, but to the wider community as well. This mother's not alone in her concerns. There are a lot of people who are waking up to this problem, and I think one of the reasons is that we now sense that our own children are at risk, and that's getting our attention. And that's why I think we stand on the threshold of one of our greatest opportunities. And Mike Cope and I have been working on this for the past year. We've been going from one side of the country to the other, meeting with groups of young people and larger groups of people who seem alienated from the church. And as a result, we've put together the What Really Matters project. Some of the tools in this project include some brief video presentations that can be watched by small groups. These contain topics that are meaningful and relevant not only to the lives of young people, but to anyone who is searching for ways to find a greater sense of community. With these brief video presentations, we're providing 2 sets of study guides. One is for those who are a little more familiar with religious language, a little more comfortable with it, and the second set is for those who are not overtly religious. And we're putting these up on 2 websites, and they're called reallymatters.org and reallymatters.net. So we have the one project, What Really Matters, and this one is designed primarily for young people and for others who are searching for meaning and for community. But we're going to do something else. We want to address this new openness that we find in the churches. And one of the ways we're going to do this is through a series of messages that we call What Really Matters About Church. And this will focus on the central problem that we face, and that is that gap between church and world, the gap between the church and increasingly many of our own children, the gap between the church and the wider community. Because if we can find ways to open up the church to this larger vision, then we can overcome so many of the problems that we've wrestled with for so many years. When Mike and I visit with young people, what they're searching for is just a word about life, a word to make life more meaningful, a word that can lead them to greater fulfillment, really, in their lives. And I think when we pause for just a moment, this is what all human beings want. All human beings from the beginning of time have yearned for hope and for meaning for their lives. And I think this is what made Jesus' heart beat just a little faster, as he imagined a people, his people, who would be open to all, who would somehow not get trapped in some God box of a temple or a synagogue or a building with walls, but that would be open to see all of the people. I believe that right now we have a great combination. On the one hand, working with young people and for those who are searching for meaning and for community, and on the other, working alongside churches who are struggling to find a larger, wider, more inclusive vision for their churches. Churches that may be less toxic and where the air is fresher for our own children and for those in the wider community. Some of you have been with us for many years. We need you now more than ever. If you can make a generous gift now, it will help us to launch this work into the new year. And for those of you who haven't been involved with us before, I hope you'll find this important enough that you'll want to be involved. Earlier when I spoke to you about the mother, when I told her about these things and the hope that fills these things, her eyes filled with tears. Here's what I know. We cannot, we will not fail that mother. And we cannot and will not fail her children and the children of the world.